The next lecture is by Avshalom Elizur and by Tzachi Pilpel, and the title is When Structure Outlasts Its Substance, Platonic Idealism and Physical Invariance, Highlighting the Physical Uniqueness of Life.
Thank you very much. This brief presentation reflects a dialogue between me and Tzachi, with me bringing some ideas from theoretical physics and Tzachi trying to match them with his beautiful work on genetics. You know, the physicist is always looking for some invariance in nature. We see a chaotic reality, things are changing, and then we strive to find, to reveal the basic laws, the basic principles governing this changing reality. And very interestingly, there are some invariants in evolution in biology, which I'm not sure have been duly noticed so far, and there is some very interesting correspondence between them. Because we have very little time, so the division of labor is going to be absolutely uneven. I will bring only the structure and the substance, which is going to be shown by Tzachi. We will relegate it to the paper later. I'll just bring the basic idea, something purely qualitative, and then we hope that we can show some more quantitative meat in it. This is an old debate. It goes back to philosophy. There is form, there is matter, and do form, like number, like idea, have any precedence on matter? Platonism had a certain opinion, Aristotelianism another. We don't need to go into that, but when we are talking about life, there is something very interesting. Life, by essence, is a process which differs from inanimate matter in the following way. In the inanimate world, we often see material objects changing their form. There is the substance remains, but the form changes. There is degradation. There is new assembly. What is unique to the organism is that it has a form, but usually it's not the same matter, whether through metabolism or through reproduction. Very often you think that you see the same organism, whether it's an insect or a plant or whatever, and it turns out to be the same structure, the same form, but the matter has changed, whether through metabolism or through reproduction. Now, there are many attempts, and because this society is also a society of origins of life and astrobiology, so very often we try to think about other forms of life, and we are trying to define life. What is it compared to inanimate matter? Is it possible that we are touching here on something which is very unique to life? Could it be that life is a process by which form outlasts its matter? Well, it's not that easy. We know examples from the inanimate world in which such forms outlast their matter and they survive it. Take a sound signal, so its modularity does not change when it passes from one medium to another, so it's completely another matter, and still it's the same form. Think about this tornado sucking in air and debris and then ejecting it, so it also kind of metabolizes, but the wheeling pattern persists. So it's not enough to define what is so unique to life. But we still feel that there is something in the living form which is sometimes stronger than the matter. Look at these pebbles. These pebbles, their shape and color stem from the properties of their chemical constituents, right? What color they have, what shape. But these are not pebbles. This is lithops, a very cute kind of plant which tries to resemble the pebbles in order not to be eaten and in order to survive in the desert. In this case, it is the form that persists. There is a form that the plant strives to achieve, and it is that form which dictates what kind of nutrients, what kind of minerals it will absorb in order to resemble the surrounding pebbles. When you make a hole in a glass, you get this kind of pattern, which is beautifully similar to what the spider is, the spider web is creating, with the difference that, once again, in this case, this kind of form of spirals stems from the properties, from the physical properties of the glass, Whereas in the case of the spider web, it is the form which the spider strives to attain, and it is this form which dictates what kind of protein it would use in order to create these fibers. And moreover, this and this is also important. This form, the inanimate form, produces from outside, whereas very often the living form is created vice versa. So what we have is matter changing its form very often, but then sometimes form changes its matter. But in life, it is something in which the two things are changing. The form also changes. So what is it which survives? This is a problem dealt by Darcy Thompson, where he showed that different forms actually have the same invariant. So we know that life is a process where pure abstract configurations survive their matter, but they are themselves survived by their more abstract properties. This is something that evolution usually does. You have a signal, you have noise, and the environment has signals which are feeble, noise which is very often dominant when you go from one place to another. But when the living organism multiplies in many places, it does the following beautiful thing. A lot of signals combine together with a lot of noise, such that at the end, you get the noise coming out, rising from the signal, according to the Schrödinger formula. This is not much different than what the telescope is doing when collecting both noise and signal from many places and then integrating them together. So this is what the task facing the genome is therefore twofold. It has to control for those properties of the organism which are invariant, and then those properties have to adapt, and here is where evolution comes, to those invariant properties of the environment. I can give only one example. Think about the statolites of the plant directing its growth upwards. So there actually the plant is recognizing some constant of nature, which is G. And this is the most beautiful part. We can see that during evolution, when you go upwards the evolutionary tree, you see an increase of symmetry of the organism. Well, actually, you begin with asymmetry, and then you go to radial symmetry, and then you go to bilateral symmetry. What is important, and this is, I think, is new, is when you bring into account the dimension of time, that is motion, you see that symmetry is increasing, despite the apparent decrease from bilateral to radial. Amazingly, this corresponds beautifully to Netter's theorem about the invariance of physical laws. You know, Emmy Netter, in a very famous proof, has shown that all the conservation laws of physics actually are kinds of symmetries. And you can show that the fact that you have many organisms being similar to one another absolutely corresponds to the translational symmetry having to do with momentum conservation, translation in time, the fact that the organism retains its shape over many times, over many places. Life is a process, I think, that where pure abstract configurations survive their matter, but this configuration itself is survived by its own more abstract form, and it is these, and we are talking now about the genes. It is these single genes which actually adapt themselves to those abstract configurations of the environment. It is therefore the genome, through a unique hierarchy of genes, which has to do this work to attain, which actually has attained the first mathematical abstractions of nature, later recognized by life. I've talked about structure and about the material comprising it, and as you see, the chairman is telling me that I have so little time. So until Tzachi and I manage to bring the paper to you, all I want to show to you is that there is a very beautiful and fruitful idea, even open to some experimental predictions, looking at the genome as a kind of hierarchy that actually absorbs information from the environment, and the way it absorbs the information from the environment is not much different than what we physicists are doing in trying to reach the most basic principles of physics. That's about it.
Thank you very much, Avi.